Have you ever witnessed a moment so pure, so powerful, that it silenced an entire room? Today, I'm going to tell you a story that most people have never heard. A story about one of the most respected leaders in the world, a man surrounded by strict security, tight schedules, and royal protocols. But on one particular day, he did something completely unexpected. This is the story of the day Nelson Mandela broke all protocol, just to hug a child. The year was 1996. South Africa was still feeling the waves of transformation. The wounds of apartheid had not yet healed, but hope was in the air. Mandela, now president, had become a global icon of forgiveness, dignity, and strength. That day, he was scheduled to visit a children's hospital in Johannesburg, a routine event in his diary. Smiles, speeches, handshakes, the usual. But what happened there was anything but routine. As Mandela entered the hospital, everything was carefully orchestrated. Security was tight. Media was ready. Doctors and staff lined the hallways. The children had been prepped for days, told to behave, smile, wave, but not to approach too closely. Mandela was a busy man. He had other places to be. And yet, destiny had other plans. In one of the rooms, lying alone on a bed, was a 6-year-old girl named Amara. She had been battling leukemia for months. Her parents were farmers from a rural village. They couldn't afford much, but they had brought her here with the last of their savings, hoping, praying for a miracle. That day, Amara wasn't told about Mandela's visit. Doctors thought it would be too much for her fragile heart. But Amara knew. Somehow, she knew. As Mandela walked down the hallway, smiling and waving, a nurse whispered something in his ear. He stopped, turned to her slowly. She quietly told him about Amara, about her illness, about how she had only one wish, to meet Madiba, as she called him. The room fell silent. The security team hesitated. The protocol team shook their heads. It wasn't on the schedule. But Mandela simply raised a hand and said, "Take me to her." They walked into the room. Amara was half asleep, her little body weak, her eyes barely open. But when she heard footsteps, she turned, and then she saw him, Nelson Mandela, not on television, not in a newspaper, but right there, in front of her bed. The nurses say her eyes widened, her lips trembled. She tried to sit up but couldn't. Mandela walked to her slowly, gently, and sat beside her bed. No cameras, no press, just a man and a child. And then, something extraordinary happened. She lifted her tiny arms and whispered, "Can I have a hug?" Silence. Even the bodyguards looked stunned. This wasn't in the protocol. A head of state wasn't supposed to do this. There were health concerns, risks. But Mandela didn't care. Without a second thought, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her. A long, warm, fatherly hug. For nearly 2 minutes he held her. No words, just warmth. Later, the nurse said Amara whispered in his ear, "Thank you for making me feel alive." That moment changed everything. Mandela stayed in the room longer than scheduled. He held her hand. He kissed her forehead. He told her she was strong, stronger than many world leaders he had met. He told her he loved her. When Mandela walked out of the hospital, the media rushed forward. They asked him what took him so long, what happened inside. He smiled and simply said, "Sometimes the smallest souls carry the biggest light. I just met one of them." Amara passed away 3 weeks later, but her parents said those final days were her happiest. She smiled again. She laughed. She kept telling everyone, "Madiba hugged me. I'm special." And she was, because that day, Mandela didn't just visit a hospital. He reminded the world what leadership truly means. Not power, not fame, but humanity. Years later, that story quietly surfaced in a local South African newspaper. It never made global headlines. It wasn't used in political campaigns. Because Mandela didn't do it for attention. He did it because he understood something we often forget. That true greatness isn't measured by titles or trophies. It's measured by the kindness we show when no one's watching. So the next time you hear the name Nelson Mandela, remember this story. Remember that behind the powerful speeches, the historic struggle, the iconic smile, was a man who broke protocol just to hug a dying child. Because in that moment, that child's happiness mattered more than any schedule. What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others. Nelson Mandela. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of humanity. And if you want more untold stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Because sometimes, the stories you've never heard are the ones you'll never forget.